The Twins have dropped 4 straight, 6 of their last 7, 15 of their last 21. If that's not a death spiral, I don't know what is. Today, they'll turn to Pablo Lopez to be a stopper. We're going to dive into all that. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNEN. Joining me is Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the tweets, and he has been a ball writer for a quarter century in the BBWAA for this is year 13, if math is correct. This is his first year voting for Hall of Famers, which we talked about in his first episode. Go back and check that out. But I have been watching the Twins for 30 years, covering them for about half that long, and I'm very excited to talk to you today, even though the baseball has not been good. The baseball has not been baseballing for your Minnesota Twins. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on the YouTubes. And, of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Today, we're going to dive into the Twins needing Pablo Lopez to be that cliched stopper. Twins are 6-15 in their last 21 games. Again, as I said in the open, if that's not a death spiral, I don't know what is. We'll talk about the fact that the rest of the division, despite what it looks like, has not run away with things over the Twins' tough stretch here. And we'll also touch on maybe possible drastic steps that need to be taken, how to fix what's going on, and playoff odds, because they're still better than you think. But before we get started, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started, and you can catch every pitch of the Twins' hometown broadcast with Chris Atterbury and friends on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app, search Twins. It's Pablo Lopez. It's Griffin Canning. It's 6:40 p.m. Central at Target Field. Same bat time, same bat channel as Monday night. And again, as I've been saying, Dave, that sounds almost like a threat. Like, you can catch Twins baseball. Like, is there a what am I trying to say? Is there an antibody for that? Is there a vaccine for catching Twins baseball right now?
Is there a Jesse the Body for it? I think Jesse the Body is the only antibody for Twins baseball at this point.
Why don't you tell me? When did you serve in the military?
That's pretty good.
I bring lessons from Will Sasso. Oh, hey, you need a microphone, Dave.
Well, now you probably can hear me better. So
yeah. Why don't you use your microphone, Dave?
I'm changing my. You know how baseball managers will try and change their luck by standing in a different place in the dugout. I'm changing my camera angle a little bit, so I've got more of my fat head, and I don't mean my fat head. I mean my fat head behind me a little bit. It's better aesthetic. So, but I forgot to move my microphone, so I guess I ruined the Twins' new winning streak by
one of my all-time favorites is "Thank You, Mommy, for my fat head." And when they were really big, when you could get Ben Roethlisberger on your wall for some reason, which is all different types of creepy. Yeah, I'm changing things up too. I'm wearing pants today, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, Twins in the throes of a death spiral, 6-15 in their last 21. Dave, I want you to guess how many teams are worse in that span.
Well, I can think of one.
Well, don't think of any more, because that's it.
That's it? Just the White Sox, huh?
Twins 70-53 when they woke up on August 18th, 6-15 And if you're thinking, well, that's why the other guys have run away with the division. They've been playing great. Twins have been playing bad. Cleveland's 10-11 over that span. Kansas City is 11-11 over that span. And keep in mind, 3 of those wins for Kansas City were against these very Twins. So you're looking at an 8-11 otherwise team. Neither of these teams have run away with it. And an example I kind of thought of was the Twins could have followed the Astros path and instead have followed the Disastros path, because the Astros started off slow as well and then took advantage of the fact that nobody else in that division was all that good. The Rangers, defending champions, sub 500 right now. Mariners barely hanging on because they have no offense to speak of. Meanwhile, the Twins have two flawed teams ahead of them, and they've had the chance to really, stick it to them at different points this year, but they can't seem to get out of their own way.
I'm still buying into, a little bit, Royce Lewis's optimistic take on what's to come. Although I guess we are sort of running out of time for that. But it is only September 10th. It's not the 20th. It's not the 30th. Carlos Correa is still on the tarmac, waiting for instructions to take off, and hopefully Byron Buxton is also somewhere in the airport ready to do the same thing.
I fell off the jet.
He's got to be more careful. So you mentioned the Rangers, and of course, I thought you brought up a great point a few days ago that maybe the Twins can do a Rangers, like a 2023 Rangers, where they had several rough patches in the second half. We're amid a collapse a few times. Mm-hmm. They lost, I want to say, 7 out of 8 to begin September. They had another 4-game losing streak in the middle of the month, including 3 against Cleveland. So we know how that is. And then at the end, I think they lost 4 of their last 6 games of the regular season, and they still managed to win the World Series. Do I see the Twins as being quite as ready to win a World Series as the 2023 Rangers? Well, in hindsight, and for the Rangers and foresight for the Twins, not necessarily, but I still think that it is possible for the Twins to get their wind again. I think they're out of gas right now. That doesn't mean they're going to be out of gas for the rest of the regular season. But, you look at Royce Lewis, I think he's probably hurting a little bit. He's probably got some confidence issues, and he's just, not really used to playing this deep into the season. So, he hasn't been able to carry things. So we'll see if there's enough time left to get one more wind and get things right as we head into the playoffs. They're only 3 games ahead of the Tigers. That would be funny and embarrassing if the Tigers actually came back to get into the playoffs after dumping Jack Flaherty. So we'll hopefully at least that won't happen.
Little revenge for 2009, which is already 15 years ago. I can't quite.
Nobody even remembers what you mean. Well, Twins fans do, but I don't think
I can't even wrap my brain around the fact that that's 15 years ago. Twins beating the Tigers in game 163 in the last regular-ish season game at the Metrodome. Definitely go back and rewatch it if you want to feel plenty of anxiety and then a nice rush at the end there. But we got a lot of ground to cover today. Twins playoff odds still 79.7% on FanGraphs, 77.8% on Baseball Prospectus. Division odds obviously very, very low at 2.9% on FanGraphs, 4.7%. At this point, that ship has sailed as far as really the only way you're going to do it is if you sweep Cleveland and Cleveland stinks the rest of the way. And even still, you've got Kansas City in the middle of their playing, running interference. So honestly,
those playoff odds are kind of like those catch odds, on StatCast, where it's like, well, there's a chance, and they base it on math more so than
vibes.
Not vibes, but just the jump that the player got, and just there are some other things that make it a little misleading. So there's a statistical chance based on how many wins the Twins already have and how many they need that they're 80% good for the playoffs. But does that take into account how much gas is left in the tank, or how much confidence they have in their heads? No, it doesn't. So, or how it also doesn't account, I don't think, for Correa and Buxton being on the field or not. So right. It's misleading is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, at the very best. I think and you have you see the in-game odds. They have those little charts on ESPN. 99.9% to win. You're up 10-6 with 1 out left in the 9th. And then they score 5 and win. And the average fan says, well, what happened? And you say, well, the other 0.1%. It doesn't mean that it's going to bear out the way that data says for sure. It just means that that's where you are on your curve of the season at that given point. And, many teams have made comebacks from larger gaps at this point in the year. The Mets, the year that Luis Castillo, former Twin Luis Castillo, dropped that pop-up, come to mind. And the Twins coming back on the Tigers 09, and I think in 06, they actually had a pretty nice little run there at the end too, where they had to take care of business. But anyway, let's do this. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Twins' stats during the skid, the guys who have faltered, the guys who have been actually competent and solid, few and far between, but there are a couple. And then at some point too, we'll talk about needing Pablo Lopez to be a stopper, because in the game of baseball, that's kind of what's that?
Again,
as one does. But yeah, let's take that break, and then when we come back, we have a lot more ground to cover here on this edition of Locked On Twins. Well, our friends at Game Time want you to know that they, even though the season is coming to an end, there are still ball games to get out to, regardless of where you're at. And if you're watching a playoff team or a team that's currently in playoff position, no pun intended, you've got opportunities to go to those games. But even the games where it's, you're just watching teams that are kind of shuffling for the future. You're watching the Texas Rangers, or you're watching the I guess I don't want to say the Chicago White Sox, because maybe that's not fair, but your options to get to games are greatly increased when you check out Game Time. Download that Game Time app, and it's not games though; it's concerts, it's comedy shows, it's plays, anything you need a ticket to, Game Time's got you covered. Personally, I like to have the all-in feature toggled. It doesn't have anything to do with AEW wrestling, but I bet you can get those tickets too. But all-in pricing means that when you click buy, you know exactly what you're going to spend the moment you hit buy, the moment you commit to purchase. None of this bait and switch on the back end, like some of the other guys where you think you're spending $20 and you end up spending 40 or 50. You don't have to worry about that. Also, panoramic seat views. You know what you're going to see in front of you from wherever you're going to sit, in the stadium, in the concert hall, in the theater, you name it. You've got a good idea what it's going to look like. It's the perfect ticketing experience. And they also take really good care of you. Lowest price guarantee. Game Time says if you find the same ticket elsewhere cheaper, they'll give you 110% of the difference. So check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dave. Yeah, the Twins have Pablo Lopez going up against Griffin Canning. And as much as I want to say, I thought the Twins would have had a pitching advantage in the opener with David Festa against Reed Detmers, this is one where it's like, okay, this is where you got to take care of business. Like, if you lose this one, and again, we're not doing the ha, everything is must win at this point, but Canning's got an ERA over 5. He's the kind of guy the Twins should have no problem possibly getting their I don't want to say season turned around, but like these recent struggles turned around on. But at the same time, too, it's like they're averaging like 2 runs a game in losses over this stretch. And as I said with Kansas City, like you don't have confidence inspired watching this offense. You don't feel like the next 3 or 4 run inning is right around the corner. It just doesn't feel like that.
Well, I don't think it's not going to take just one game or one inning, or it's going to take a couple building blocks to get things going again. I think the first building block is a solid enough performance by Pablo, and a few runs, and then it might take some kind of outbreak where you get 15 the next day, some kind of huge number like that, and then you can build off that. I think you look at Rocco gives his big speech in his his brief speech to the media, and his talking to the team, kind of putting them in timeout. I saw it referred to as in Kansas City. That didn't turn things around in one day, and I don't think it's, even though it's you feel like you're emotionally lashing out, things aren't going to fix themselves in 24 hours after that. So, but I do think it does again start with Pablo, and he's been so good in the second half. I like this pitching matchup better than last night. I was worried about not Griffin Jacks, but worried about Reed Detmers coming out. He's had great games in the past. He was really solid. The Twins are not hitting the ball well. The Twins rookies they're flagging a little bit. Festa, Zebby, Simeon Woods Richardson, they're kind of way past their expiration dates at this point in uncharted land. So that's kind of a tough thing to, when you look ahead about how the Twins are going to get going. One of those guys has to kind of find their wind too. Maybe not all of them, but at least one of them is going to have to get back a little bit of the mojo that they had in the first half. So I think that's another thing. They're going to need someone to fill those Joe Ryan starts out, at least from here to the end of the regular season. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, but I think they can happen. And it's still, it's easy to be doom and gloom, and maybe appropriate to be doom and gloom. But I still think one of the building blocks about getting the team back on a winning form is today with Pablo shutting them down, a couple of runs, and then going from there and trying to get the offense going in the next couple games, which they should against the Angels, who are not very good.
My primary gripe against the doom and gloom is that if you're dooming and glooming when you're 17 games up or over 500, it really loses its effect when you hit the skids. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Then you just suddenly become the boy who cries constantly because everything's bad all the time, and that's nobody wants to listen to that either. There's universal positivity and universal negativity don't really work in this game, but understanding that there's far more negativity than there is, positive results is a good perspective to maintain, and one that I try to maintain. I have a friend in the DMs who says this is the finish to the season Joe Pohlad deserves. To what extent do you think it's fair that he's being blamed? Because the rookie pitchers have pitched well as could be expected, as far as Zebby and SWR and Festa, but not addressing the very clear need that this rotation had for one more veteran starter. Again, I know maybe that bumps someone like SWR out of the rotation, and then he doesn't develop as he has this year. There's a lot of different things that could have changed, but the quote unquote cheating out on this team at the worst possible time. I kind of ignored it earlier in the year because anything can happen. And if you win with a lower budget, it doesn't mean that you justified the lower budget. And if you lose with the lower budget, then, it becomes a different thing. But over the whole course of the season, it's just a complicated issue to unpack as the games are being played. With that said, where do you stand on the whole, well, this is what Joe Pohlad deserves?
Well, I don't know kind of how you put it, Brandon. I don't know that if they had made one or two moves at the trade deadline, or if they had even made a bigger move before the season started for a starting pitcher or whatever, I don't know that they necessarily would be in first place anyway. We don't know that for sure. But what we do know is that they didn't make those moves, and they're not in first place, and they didn't try to make those moves. And there's a cause and effect, but there's also something else, a second thing, and that I can't really name. So I don't know that the Pohlads being unwilling to get out over their skis a little bit on payroll and future payroll has prevented the Twins from being better. But I do know that they didn't try.
Yeah,
I know that for sure because Trevor Richards, that's who they brought in basically.
yeah.
And they made these convoluted trades for the Seattle trade, and that sort of worked out, but haven't really. They're relying on Paddock coming off an injury. Right. I mean, you think about it now, and it's like, well, no wonder they're struggling to stay in the playoff race. So I think that, long story short, anybody being upset with ownership not putting out everything they could have to help the team win this season, to take advantage of an American League that is very winnable. And, you never know how soon these windows are going to close. They couldn't have foreseen necessarily. I even give them this. You couldn't have foreseen for sure that Buxton wouldn't be on the field and Correa wouldn't be on the field as much. I know that sounds silly to some of you fans out there because they are frequently injured, but they started the season more or less healthy, but they didn't account for the possibility that those guys were going to go down either. And it's just, I would be very upset if I were Rocco and the players. I mean, the players want to win with the guys they have in the clubhouse pretty much, but maybe some of the older guys will look around and say, hey, we could have used a trade or two here. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think it's almost always reasonable to blame or put the responsibility on ownership for doing or not doing. They're the bottom line.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think those are perfectly legitimate feelings. And would the Twins be in first place with these other moves that people wanted to have been made? I don't know, but they didn't make them, and they're not. So let's get upset. That's fine. We should be upset.
It to me, the getting upset again loses its effect if that's your persistent state of mind. We look at that Mariners trade here before we go to break for the last time. Nobody's really won that trade. Jorge Blanco is going to head into free agency. I don't think the team option's getting picked up. He's been worth 0.8 baseball reference WAR, 91 OPS plus. Just not a great year at second base for the Mariners. Offense has been just a mess for them. But for the Twins on that side, I mean, Darren Bowen had a 6.07 ERA at this year, and he's 23. So not exactly anything too exciting there. Gabriel Gonzalez kind of expected to be the biggest part of the trade, I think. Slugged 379 at high A, repeating high A this year, went from a 677 OPS with Everett last year to a 706 in his second go-around in Cedar Rapids. Won't see Anthony DeSclafani in a Twins uniform. Probably won't see Topa this year. I don't know. It's hard to really make a trade with that many moving parts that doesn't help anybody. So,
they paid for, they got people to pay for salary. So it's like they look at it as a win that way, that, they didn't have to pay that much for DeSclafani or Manuel Margot or, all the other people that they've brought in that way. They've had other people, and that's great that the front office can get a trophy or something, a WWE belt for, winning some kind of salary war or keeping salary down. That's great. You can't hang that banner up though. So I can't give them too much credit for that because it hasn't helped the team win that many games. So sorry.
And that to me is why, even if they do get into the postseason and win, it's going to be weird to see how that fans deal with that. Is it going to be satisfying at all if the Twins play deep into October? And I honestly don't know the answer, but we are well beyond getting our break. Let's do that. And then when we come back, I want to talk some stats. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, but we have a little something different for you here for the next almost 2 weeks. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You don't even have to win. It's like you can put money down on the Panthers if you felt like it. But with a YouTube TV base plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So again, a lot of people talking about how NFL Sunday Ticket is, it's a little more expensive than it used to be. Well, this is a good way to get a free trial to see if it's for you, and FanDuel wants to help you out there. So again, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, check it out, and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Dave, some numbers here. Twins on this 21-game death spiral are hitting 230 as a team, 287 on base, 369 slug. That's a 656 OPS. Don't need a ton of context to know that's not very good. In 21 games, they have scored 70 runs. Again, don't need a ton of context to know that's not very good. Pitching has actually, shockingly, been surprisingly decent. 4.91 ERA, certainly not going to make your socks roll up and down, as an old pastor of mine used to say. But 1.30 whip is, I consider pitcher whip like blood pressure. Usually when it's high, there's an underlying issue beyond that, or it's a creator of other issues. But they've struck out a batter per inning, roughly. 2.6 walks per nine, perfectly acceptable rate. 1.08 homers per nine, again, perfectly acceptable rate. The pitching has not been the issue. And home runs for this pitching staff, when things have gone sideways, have been there. Honestly, though, the offense, I don't know how much you can actually say positive about it. So there's 4 hitters since August 18th with an OPS over 800 and at least 25 plate appearances. How many of them do you think you can name, Dave?
On the Twins?
Yes, so 4 over 800, 25
Larnick.
plus. Larnick has an 874. He is top of the list.
Wallner.
863, number 2. But if you get these next 2, I will be shocked.
Edouard Julien.
Edouard Julien has a 745. So nope, not quite.
Vasquez.
Vasquez has a 481. Shockingly, has gone on the skip of late. I thought
he went back on the toilet, didn't he? Austin Martin.
Austin Martin is on the outside looking in at 776. So very close. 367 on base. So maybe someone they should
How about Jeffers?
Nope, Jeffers is right beneath him at 767.
All right, I'm out of guesses. I don't know.
Manuel Margot, 810. Doesn't seem fair. He's hurt. Kyle Farmer, 821.
Yeah, he did. He hit a long home run last night. So
the Straits, they are dire.
Back.
Royce Lewis, 75 plate appearances and a 444 OPS. Brooks Lee, 429. Willie Castro, 498. Jose Miranda, 627. Carlos Santana, 667. Max Kepler, 277. I mean, it's almost unthinkable how much this offense goes in the drain all at the same time. And I'm not, the TV guys would always say to Rocco, yeah, so how much stock do you put on offense being contagious? All these home runs. And Rocco's like, I don't. The point for me is if the offense is contagious, it's because you're facing lousy pitching or a lousy pitcher. So you're all racing to the bat rack. But
was that a Patrick Royce impression, kind of?
It was actually a TV guy, but it was like if Royce did TV. So yeah, kind of. But at the same time,
I think you're right. You're definitely right about the offense. I will say this now that I'm thinking of the pitching, where it's a little misleading, kind of in a bad way. A lot of the starters have just they're not getting deep into games, and they're being the bullpens, except for that one game in Kansas City, they're balling out. They're bailing out, especially the middle guys. Sands and Alcala's been better, and so forth, and they've been kind of rescuing these really short starts by the starters. I thought his Simeon Woods Richardson's previous start in Kansas City was his best in a while, although I think it was a good move for Rocco to take him out when he did. But that was the best he looked in several starts, so that's good. Festa's a little bit flagging. Zebby's flagging a little bit. So, and Bailey's had had a clunker in there. So the starting pitching, while the numbers round up to something respectable, they haven't gotten enough depth in terms of getting deep into the game from their starting pitching. And that's another, going back to Polad's making a boo-boo. They could have used another starter, obviously, even if Joe Ryan hadn't gotten hurt